There, I see it.
All right. I think
We
we
are
did it.
here. Awesome.
So, slight hiccup. We found our way here and we almost got lost in conversation. And then I was like, no, we need to go live.
We need to go live. Now
And
I
then it
have to
wouldn't let
find
me.
us.
So we are now live. We just had to find new passwords, find new ways to get here, and we made it. We made it.
You figured it
Oh,
out. Yeah.
welcome, Deb.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm really, truly happy. I'm actually posting the link.
Excellent.
Here we are. I found it. Actually, why is there's an ad there? I don't like it. Okay, nope. There we are. Oh, that's an old one.
Okay, is it us? Is it you?
It is. It's an old one though. All right.
Oh. Diana, hi. You can see us.
If there's evidence, we're here.
Yes, slight glitch, but we made it. So that's good. And Deb and I, we jump on these calls and we're like, oh, we'll just talk for a few minutes before it starts. And then we get into these amazing conversations. It's like, we were just saying, or I was just saying, I guess, we need to be like, maybe selling the before and after conversations, because sometimes we get into such juicy things and it's like, is that things we should share? I don't know if that's things we should share. We might set up a Patreon for that. We'll see.
Yeah, because that's the more personal part, right?
That's right, where you get to, a little more. Awesome, Krista. You can see and hear us. Great. I think Deb's just trying to invite her members in, posting the.
Yep.
So, Deb, I'll give you a second to do that. And then,
okay.
And please forgive my pale face and snotty nose. I have a cold. I'm suffering badly. But as I told my daughter, it was worth it for the baby snuggles that I got last weekend. So, there was that. And, but yes. So, Deb, we were just discussing the,
okay.
Preamble,
yeah, let's go back.
Maybe.
Go back to the very beginning where I said to you something about the 4 agreements and you went, oh my God, I was just reading that book. and here's mine.
Yeah.
And it's funny because what I was going to share was what I read in the companion book. And I said, I picked it up and I never, someone bought me this and I never did it. And I actually bookmarked where we both did that, like, thumb through the book and find a page. And we were just, again, like spot on with what we found. And we were just kind of laughing about how we were so in tune. And like, for me, just like for me, Larissa, it was like, what, a couple of years?
I haven't picked it up in years. And and the same messages we got. So
So we're just kind of backtracking from where we started, but we thought it was really interesting that, what I read, and I'll read it. And then if you want to read your excerpt and then we'll talk. If you guys have handy the 4 agreements book, pull it out. If you happen to just be walking by your bookshelf and it popped out, that's actually like how I found this book. I'm trying to remember how long ago it was. I want to say like 98, 99 or somewhere in there. I was in New Hampshire on vacation. I was in a bookstore and this literally fell off the shelf and landed at my feet. And I picked it up and I opened up a page and it was like God speaking to me, because I was going through a really rough time. And I don't remember what the words were, but when I read that, I felt that connection with spirit and that knowledge, like you have those moments where you go, okay, I'm not alone. There's someone bigger than me that has an eye on me, that is guiding me, and I can rest assured, because it was just such a perfect message. And so I love playing that game, especially with the book. So without further ado, I'll read. Awareness is always the first step. Because if you are not aware, there is nothing you can change. If you are not aware that your mind is full of wounds and emotional poison, you cannot begin to clean and heal the wounds, and you will continue to suffer. There's no reason to suffer. With awareness, you can rebel and say, that is enough. You can look for a way to heal and transform your personal dream. The dream of the planet is just a dream. It is not even real. If you go into the dream and start challenging your beliefs, you will find that most of the beliefs that guide you into the wounded mind are not even true. You will find that you suffered all those years of drama for nothing. Why? Because the belief system that was put inside your mind is based on lies.
And there's so much of that. So much of that.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was, like, the actual section so much didn't have an exact correlation, but as Deb started to read to me what she had opened to, and I was like, oh, we're reading the same passage, because the very first word on the page was awareness. And just now when you asked me about it, I was like, oh, I didn't bookmark it. And so then I was flipping through the book and I'm like, where else does it say awareness? Other than where you were reading. I'm like, I'm not finding this word anywhere. So it took me a moment to find it again. But the fact that it popped immediately, because we've been talking a lot, Deb and I have been talking a lot about awareness and being conscious to where we may need to look at things, where we may need to pay attention. And so the fact that we both got that message in a different way from the same book at the same time. It's like, those sort of things happen to Deb and I all the time. But it still floors me when it happens, because it's just like, even though every single time that we get together to chat, something like this happens. And so it shouldn't by now, right? It shouldn't. But then I'm always like, wow, we are so connected. We're so connected. And I love that. I just love that.
Yeah, me too. And I think that's, that's the magical part of it all. And I always say, like, I should be used to this by now, but it's the awe of it, is that it, and I think that's why it keeps you engaged. What's
when I
going to
think
happen
if it was
next?
every day, then it would be like, so what? And I don't think it would happen, because we wouldn't be in awe of it, right? Because you need that magic to remind you of it so that it can keep happening. Yeah. And as Deb and I were talking about that passage, and we were talking about lack and paying attention, and then we got sort of onto this whole money talk, and we only get together for a few minutes before we get on live. And so it was like, got into this whole thing about the messages that we get as women and why we don't value ourselves, and why we then sort of like push money away almost. Yeah, I would say push money away, because we are not valuable in our society. We don't value ourselves. We're not valued. And then we also, Deb, you mentioned, if you look at the fact that we do creativity, we do healing, we do spirituality, none of those things are valued in our society. And so, of course, the whole struggle around, so why I'm passionate about helping women into their most abundant life, their most authentic life, so that can change, right? Stop listening to the bullshit that we're being fed.
Yeah. And, it's so funny, as you're talking, I'm just thinking about, like, how, yes, we don't value ourselves as healers. We're givers by nature. And usually when we learned the skill, and I don't know, but I can pretty much, I'm pretty much sure, just from knowing you, that you can relate to what I'm about to say, is that as healers, a lot of times our roles in the family when we're younger is healer. And so I know for me, like, I'll just share a quick little story. There's a woman that does family constellation work here in Sedona. I just absolutely love her. She's amazing. Well, we were doing a session one time, and so we're going through my ancestry, and she has, I can't really share too much of how she works, just because it's so involved, but she has, it's basically you're acting out. And if you're doing it with a group of people, you choose people who act out your family, and you don't even tell these people anything about your family, right? You tell her, like, who do you have in your family, and she'll just have that amount of people. So they play the parts of your family, and they just act out in an energetic field. And it's astounding how accurate it is. It's like freaking astounding.
Yeah.
So this was during COVID when I had a session. So we were using pillows instead of people, and crystals and stones. And we were doing some work with my grandmothers. So on both sides of the family. And so anytime I would engage with an ancestor, I suppose I was dropping into healer mode, because she would say to me, hey, can you just be a human being right now, not be a healer? And I was like, what do you mean?
You're not human?
I'm human. I'm not acting human. Like, what does that mean? And it took a little work. So we did some work around that. I didn't even have the awareness. Speaking of awareness, I didn't have the awareness that I was, instead of connecting on a human to human level, I was connecting as healer to human, and there's a safety in that, because it's a built-in protective mechanism. I don't have to feel it on a certain, whatever trauma or drama is going on, because I'm going to rise above it, and I'm going to work from,
I'm going to
the
understand where you're coming from. And we're going to move through this together, instead of me just being angry or me just being whatever emotion I want. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah. And then, so you start to devalue yourself as a human being having the same experience or having feelings about a certain experience, because you're basically, we call that being out of our body, with, being a lot of light workers and empaths, and what is the word I'm thinking of? Sensitive. Multisensory, sensitive, empathic people have a hard time connecting in with their body and be in the moment when something like that is happening, something intense or traumatic is happening, because of early traumas, because of even before we're born, before we fully anchor in our body. I know for me, this is true, being in the womb and having drama around, and being able to sense that. It's like, ooh, there is no way I'm coming in here. There is no way.
As long as possible. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you learn skills to adapt, to get along, to survive. And healing creativity was another one of those for me, because it was where I could be alone and try to be invisible. So I was like really good at being invisible. So good that I would be forgotten everywhere. Oh, do we even have that kid? Do we even have another daughter? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I laugh now. It wasn't funny when it was happening, but now I understand how I created that. But so I think because it's also, I think because it's something that comes natural, easy, it's a survival mechanism. It doesn't have value, in a sense of, how do I equate dollars and cents to the skill? It just like, it's super easy to me. It's just like breathing in air. You mean you're going to pay me to breathe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for a lot of women, regardless of its creativity, healing, whatever it is. If it comes easy, especially, first of all, we don't value ourselves, but then if it comes easy to us, has even less value, when we have so much to offer, and really having to change that narrative for our own self, because others are not going to change it for us, right? We're not going to, hopefully you'll come into a community like yours or mine and have that space, but often, the people in your family, the people in your jobs, things like that are not going to be those people that are going to support you following your passions, or, really digging into your own healing work, that sort of thing, because it's very threatening to other people, because they're not doing it. And so if you're following your passion, they feel threatened because you might get something they might not, right? And so they're going to do everything to knock you off path. If you're doing your healing, well, that threatens them, because they're not prepared to do theirs, and they know there's going to be a change. They might not consciously know, but they know. And so they're going to do everything they can to knock you off your path. And so you have to find your own way to make that path, and hopefully find a community that you can join in to do that with. But that's really hard. And you see it in, so many women, so many women.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, we have 15 people on right now who can relate to what we're talking about around value. Just pop it in and we'll kind of open up the topic a little bit more. I just have to say, I don't know if we talked about this, but I talk about that like crabs in a bucket. When you're a crab is trying to get out of the bucket, the other ones grab and pull them down, right? But we do that to ourselves too with our belief systems, right? And so that's another reason why awareness of what is going on behind the scenes, because it's not conscious, like, oh, I believe that the sun is going to rise tomorrow at 7:30, where it can be proven right? It's all the drivers underneath the radar, right? And until you start becoming aware of what that is, you can't make any changes. You're going to keep hitting the same walls. You're going to, and keep doing the same thing over and over and over again.
And that's one of the reasons I feel like I'm constantly asking the same question, because we're so good at surface level answers, right? And I wanna help people dig a little deeper, because I do it, and I know how painful it can be, and I know how life altering it can be, but I also know how amazing your life can shift when you do it, when you do the work. And it's scary and it's hard, and it sometimes feels like it's not worth it, but it's so worth it. And so just pushing a little further to have people like, okay, that's an answer, but is it, if you really sat with it, is that the true answer? Do you believe that answer? Whatever it is. Right now what are we doing? Prayer flags. And we were talking about gratitude this past week. I can't think of an example per se, but I always have journaling questions. We always have discussion. And then it's like, okay, so what if you just dug a little bit deeper into that question until it's a little bit more uncomfortable, right? And then what would happen? And there's some people who will do it. Always, there'll be some people. And they're the ones who will really gain from it. But not everybody will, right? And and in my morning calm, we journal every morning, and we have discussion, and they've learned over time, because some of the ladies have been with me since the beginning, whenever the pandemic started, 3.5 years ago, right? So that's when we started that 6-week program we were going to do, and going
3 years later.
We meet every day, every weekday, and dig in a little more, right? Just because it's like, okay, that was good, but let's, and so they've learned now, I don't want that answer. I want the one that's uncomfortable. I want the uncomfortable answer.
Yeah, that's awesome. That, they've transformed into like becoming a seeker of the harder answer. And I think too, like when you're stuck enough that, and it's funny, it's like hitting bottom, right? You have to be stuck enough and frustrated enough with what's going on to finally get you to start going in. And because what we tend to do is we tend to look outside of us for the reasons and, the problems that are out there. If it were only this way, then I could blah, blah, blah. Right. But it's like, we're the creators and generators of our own experiences. And sometimes that's really hard to hear when you first hear that. Because you go, wait a minute, there's no way I would not create this if I was the creator. There's no way. It's got to be something outside of me. But that's the whole subconscious program, is when you're aware, when you have consciousness of those programs, that's where your power lies. Is we were kind of talking too about the voice in the head, and I think I read something out of I said I found that I couldn't find the page again because I didn't bookmark it in the companion book, but he was talking about our belief systems like parasites.
Right.
And I said, because like I was talking to my parasite this morning, and I kind of like calling it a parasite versus a subconscious belief system. One, because it is a drain when I allow it to come in and run the show. And how does it run the show? It runs the show in creating panic, fear, and draining my creative energy into an area of creating from fear, right? Just because something is the way it is right here, right now in front of me, doesn't mean that I cannot focus on what I'm creating to make it different. So there's a delay in what we're visioning and the vision that we're creating from, because there's an energy. When we have a dream, a vision, it exists in the unseen realm. It exists in a form of energy. And then by doing the things that we need to do to bring it into form, that's what makes the shift in you. But if I were to just focus on what was strictly in front of me, my vision wouldn't get created, because I'd be like, oh, well, that's not true. That can't happen. Like, how in the heck is that going to happen? Like, I don't have enough money in my bank account.
You get stuck in the house.
I don't know how to do that. Like, no idea how to build a business. Or do a summit, or
any
make
of those
YouTube
things
work, troubleshoot YouTube when it won't work.
Oh yeah, you missed that part. You're like, oh no, we can't go live. Krista was responding, yes, value, especially the older we get. Yeah, we start to recognize the value. And I don't even know if it's age. I want to say it's life experience more than age. I always thought it was age, but I think it's more life experience. And the more you start to seek and the more you start to question, the more likely you are to be like, no, that's not going to work for me anymore. That's not how it is. And Krista also says, I had a great insight one morning staring at my wood fire. Unfortunately, I neglected to journal about it, and now it's gone. Heavy sigh. I feel you. Let me tell you. That's why my journal is never far.
Yeah, and that was just for you.
Every conversation.
Yeah.
We record every conversation we have.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, because I have like a ton of journals, and I have them, energetically charged for certain things. Like this is my book of ceremony. When I'm sitting at my altar and I want to have a ceremony about something, I kind of go into that space and I write it down. So, but it's funny when I talk to my assistant and we want to implement some of these ideas, I go, oh, which book was it in? Sometimes there's crossover, because, I may be like getting an idea for some other thing, and like I'm in this
that
book.
one comes and yeah.
So but I have I love to write, and I have tons of notebooks, and that's half the battle is which book did I put that in?
And what are the things that we need to hang on to? I write a lot, I think, just so I can solidify it in my brain. I don't necessarily come back to it, but I write a lot because it's in there somewhere, right? I don't need to have it at the forefront. And Krista, I think if you, either recreated or did something else that took you on the same journey, you would end up in the same place, because it's there when you need to access it. When we search for it is when we have a problem, right? Because we're like, what was that again? That never works for me. Where did I put that? No, I need to let it go, and it comes back. Or I need to be doing something in tangent with or something so that I can get out of that conscious brain and back into the subconscious brain.
Yeah, I love that, because you reminded me of I had this little thing happen. We have these window shades, and they have little end caps at the end of them. And we had someone staying in our casita doing a healing journey week with me. And after they'd left some stuff, and I saw this little white thing on the floor, and I was like, what is this? I don't know. And I asked her about it. She's like, oh, no, that's not mine. I don't know what that is. So I just sat there and I turned it over, and I was looking at the shape and the size, and had an L on it. And I'm like, well, obviously this must be for something for the left. And I'm like, I'm never going to figure out what this is from. Right. And so I just put it down on the desk. And it was funny because 3 days later, randomly, it just popped into my head. I wasn't even down in this space. I was driving my car, and I went, oh, I bet it's from the window shades. So it's what I started to think about was how, like, when you can let it go like that, there is a part of your brain that is still working on solving the problem. So I pictured like these little elves or something, like, at a workspace, like running calculations and
Yeah.
stuff. And when they had the answer, they spit it up front so I could think about
Yeah.
it and go, oh
It's
yeah.
like,
And it was,
oh,
it's
there
what
we
it
go.
was.
We found the answer. Here it is for you. And
Yeah.
it's the same with belief systems, right? If
Yeah.
we can let something go and stop figuring out the how, right?
Mhm.
We have this vision of what it's going to be over there, and then we need to let it go and just let that do its thing, right? Those
Yep.
little elves need to go and build it so that you're always moving, because the right things will come in the right place and be there when you need it. And yes, sometimes
Yep.
you need to recognize that that's the next step. You may not recognize it as the next step, but it's like, oh, I need to follow that, right?
Yeah.
And so paying attention to that instead of, how do I get there? I don't know how to do that. What can I do next? Oh, I might as well forget it because I don't know any of this.
Yeah.
And that's where
Yeah.
so many of us spin out of control, and it's like, that's gone.
Mhm.
That dream is gone. I couldn't do it.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. I
Yeah.
give up. Yeah. Yeah. And that's sad when that happens. I feel like I want to address like trauma brain too, because there's, when we experience a lot of trauma, especially as a young child or pre-verbal, it does alter it alters your wiring.
Mhm.
But I can attest to healing, that healing works, and that it is work. It is work. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of commitment. It takes a lot of faith to shift those patterns. And I just have to say, you're so worth the effort that you will put into your own healing of your belief systems and transforming the trauma. There's so many wonderful tools that Larissa and I use for ourselves and with our clients that really, I can't speak to what you've witnessed, but I know that you have witnessed amazing transformations with these tools within yourself, within myself, and within other people. And it's not a magic wand that someone is going to wave over you, that there is. And it's not about like, oh, there must be a reason, or oh, there has to be a lesson, or oh, da, da, da. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter why. It is, and this is yours, and this is what you get to move through, because you're strong, you're resilient, and you are just pure, pure, pure love. And you are worthy of living a life that you're dreaming of, that you're desiring, that you get to fulfill that. And I'm speaking from my heart right now. I'm just so very
I
passionate
can feel it.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't live in struggle. Have the struggle, but move through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And find those people. And it may not be Deb, it may not be myself, but find the people that you need to help you move through it. If it's us, great. If it's not, that's great too. But that's one of the reasons I love collaborative work, and why I do so many summits and I do so many things with other amazing creatives and healers, is because there's somebody for everyone.
Yep.
And I just want as many people as possible to get as much as they can to start moving themselves forward. I want women to know their value and to understand that they are worth spending the time, the energy, the money on themselves, because they have value. And that is how the work gets done, right? You have to dig in, you have to be uncomfortable, and you have to put yourself first. You have to put yourself first. And we have not been taught that in our culture. We have been taught that everyone else comes first. So we have to put ourselves first. We can't wait for somebody else to do it, because it's not going to happen. So we have to do it. And so make sure, like whatever it is, maybe it's just one little thing to start with. Maybe it's just, a paint class one night a week. Maybe it's just something you do online and you book off an hour for yourself once a month. Whatever it is, to just start and then just keep increasing it. Because the more you do for you, the more you will have to give to others. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, that's a huge statement that you just made, because so many of us, women especially, um, were raised. Because my husband, I say women especially, my husband was kind of raised this way too, that
Hmm.
you give and give and give and give till there's nothing left.
Hmm.
And because that's what you're here for, you're here to give, right? So there's
Especially if you're a
givers and
healer.
there's takers. Yeah.
And you should give it
He
for
used to
free.
say,
Yeah.
there's sinks and sources, we're
Hmm.
sources and everyone else is a sink. And I'm like, well, that's kind of rough, but he was speaking out of his experience. He's speaking out of his pain.
Hmm.
And we often will do that. And then we start to put out layers of protection, right? And so as a healer, that's really tough because you can't really get into the intimate space that you need to be in with another if you're going to have those protections going on. And I don't want to say it. And this is funny because I used to hear this all the time from my mentor, and it really, like, I didn't quite understand what he was saying. I did, but I didn't, until like one time I was out here for a hike and I went, oh, because you have to have a belief system that helps you understand what I'm about to say, is
Hmm.
that we're all energy and we can't take energy from each other. If anything, we amplify each other's energy. But if you hold a belief that you will get drained if you come in contact with that person who has what we call negative energy, bad energy, dark energy, whatever, however you're labeling that,
Hmm.
that's what you will create. And that's where awareness gets to come in. And we get to work with shifting that belief, because healing, let me tell you, like from my experiences working with people, when it's done in a healthy way, it is a win-win. You get fed as much as the person you're working with does, because it's that principle of where two or more together, it's amplified, right? Group energy is so powerful when we're all harnessed and focused on the same goal, which is, with the person you're working with, it's that person you're working with, right? It's not a drain to me. It's such an honor to be holding sacred space with the person. I am not in fixing them, healing them, or doing anything for them that I know that they can't do for themselves. I know they can do it,
Hmm.
and it's just a matter of helping them find that. No one can do it for you.
No, absolutely not. And I think that's a really important point. Like, you don't go to somebody to be fixed, right? Like, there's no cure out there. You have to do the work. What I think I do is facilitate, and I
Mm-hmm.
have some tools that you may not know about. I will hold space for you. I may question things that you might not think to question. So I like to help you pay attention to those things. You absolutely can do it on your own. You don't need to have somebody else there. Everything is within. Having someone to help facilitate and guide is just, I think, helps move things in, move quicker, maybe, depending on how it's done, right? It helps you move through things and have an understanding of what you're moving through, because, maybe they've been there. I've been through a lot of different things and a lot of different healings and a lot of different traumas. I have some experience. Maybe it's, just having someone as a sounding board, somebody who's there to listen because no one's ever listened to you before. Those sort
Mm-hmm.
of things are so important. And that's why I always want people to find somebody or a community to work with, because it helps move those things forward in a
Mm-hmm.
much, I don't want to say easier because it's hard work, but a
Yeah.
much smoother, maybe, way.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think there's a certain level of ease. I'm just thinking back to Friday. I had a visit with my naturopath, and we were talking about some different things. And I was relating a story to her of my childhood, and around. It was funny because it was around success with the belief system that kind of came up, and around being able to be successful. And I like remembered how I had to be the loser in the relationship with my sister, because when she lost at anything, she was such a horrible loser. It created such bad feelings and bad tensions. And I ended up feeling like it was my fault that she got like that. So there's a dynamic happening, right? It's not her fault, but she would like flip the board over. If I was starting to win, she'd like end the game. And so this other part was like, well, if I lose, right, I can still keep playing the game, right? Because then she's happy. And so that became a subconscious belief. And it was really interesting because all my naturopath did was she heard me and she acknowledged me. She didn't just say, I acknowledge you. She just said, oh my goodness. Well, she asked me, are you the older sister? And I'm like, no, it was the younger sister. And then she said, oh, well, your sister never got over that you came in on the scene. You ruined her good time. And I'm like, yeah. And so that was the dynamic. But it was like hearing, like it's something I knew already, but hearing it mirrored back to me with compassion was huge. I started to cry and I like didn't even realize like I still had any emotion left on that, but I obviously was still acting out of that because it's a core belief, and a core belief is almost like if you picture like I picture like a nerve cell that has many different points coming off of it. Someone described it to me like it's like a house of cards too, that because your whole life is built off of this one way of being or this one way of looking at something. And so all of your choices and all of your experiences start to stack up around it. And so your whole worldview is off of this. And then you go, oh, you start doing this work and you become aware. And then you can knock down that house of cards and you can knock down that house of cards. But wait, there's still more. I have a whole village of card houses that need to fall down. Right. And you just never know when they're going to pop up, really. And how much work does it need for that? If in this case, it was like a huge internal shift just being witnessed. It's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is as simple as that, right? Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah.
I love those ones when they are. Those are like, oh, thank you for that. Other ones are not as much, and you have to revisit them over and over again. But when they do happen, when that shift happens, the more aware you become, the more you're like, oh, there's the shift right there. I see it. Right. I often see when I'm on the precipice of a shift, and it's like, oh, I can feel, because the energy gets all a little wonky and you start to see it happening everywhere and you start to question. And then all of a sudden you're like, there it is. And then the shift happens. Right. And the more aware you become, the more aware of those things you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of the healing work.
Yeah. And I what I love about it too is like that's a little bit beyond the story, right? So there's a story attached to everything, right? And there's, just getting it at the level of story, but then there's getting it at the level where you feel that internal shift. And it is a feel. It is a total feel, because it's like the lights go on. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And sometimes you're like, oh, that's what it looked like. Shit, turn the lights back off.
Yeah. Sometimes it is embarrassing. Like, oh my God. I hate to admit this. But see, that's where, honestly, you have to be super honest in this work to the degree that you're outing yourself all the time,
Yeah.
Yeah. No secrets, because they don't serve you.
No.
Transformation. They're not in service. Secrets are not in service to your transformation. They're in service to the status quo.
Yeah.
Because if that's, that's what's really interesting about this, because everything is in service to something. And we think about, we ask that question. I know you've asked this question. Well, how is that serving you? Well, it's not. Right. Yeah, we know, but it is serving something. So what is it keeping alive in you? Because what are the results? Well, the results are like, for some reason, I just can't turn the engine over into going in this direction because there's so much fear or whatever. And maybe it's just, you get to walk through the fear, and I get to hold your hand because I know you can do it, because I see your strength and I see how resilient you are, because you made it this far through all of the things that happened to you. You're here.
You're here. Yeah. It's so true. And And sometimes, yeah, and sometimes it's the fear. Sometimes it's getting to the core of your own value. Sometimes it's just like you don't even recognize how it's serving you. So then you have to start paying attention to something and going, well, if that's stopping me from doing that, how is that, how is that serving me right now? And then sometimes it's like, well, it's not, it can't be. And it's like, but if you really look at it, it is, right? Whether it's the status quo, whether it's, whatever else it is, you don't deserve it. There's something that's in there, and you have to dig in to find out what it is that's in there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because like when that concept was introduced to me, it was like, whoa, this is big. Like, it was couched to or put to me like in as loyalty, that our belief systems are loyal to our family line, because when they came on, some of the things that are ancestral that we carry with us today, that we are transforming, right? Because we get to do that work, because that's how we're changing our inner reality, our inner worlds, and that's how the outer world is going to get changed by us doing that. And that healing work with not just ourselves but with our ancestors, it came from somewhere. We dropped into this lifetime with all of these patterns and belief systems and ways of operating, the cultural ones, the ancestral ones, the gender ones, like we just have beliefs for every occasion. And they are the way we operate is serving an old master, if you want to put it that way. It's serving an old master. It's loyal to the old master. So that's why it's hard too, because we look at the tribalism around that. Like, we were talking about that earlier. If you're one of us, this is how you behave, right? You don't go out and do that other thing. I don't care how free you feel or how good it makes you feel. It's not what's done in my world, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. And just, there was something you said there in secrets, because, that is how we've passed this down. All of these ancestral traumas, all of the family traumas, and more current is those secrets. Just even think about the Me Too movement, right? The amount of secrets that came out with that, right? Because you don't talk about these things. And there's so many things, especially as women, that, we keep the secret because, we want to protect the other person. We want the status quo. We don't want to make a scene, all of the things that we've been told. And it's gotten better. Like, the 50s was probably way worse than the 60s and the 70s, like it gets better and better. It's still a problem. And not just for women. It's a problem everywhere. The secret, women who are abused, we keep that a secret because, of course, we're going to be, it's going to be on us if we tell. And it's
I need to be married to this man, and I don't want people to think ill of him. So I have to protect him, because I'm ultimately protecting myself, because I can't make it on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or think poorly of me for making this decision, or, whatever it is. And we do that with so many different things, money issues, even just talking about money in a positive way. As women, we don't talk about money, right? A lot of people don't talk about money. We're not supposed to talk about how much money we make. We're not supposed to talk about, those sort of things. And so we don't. And then as women, especially, why do you think so few women invest? Because we're not supposed to talk about those things. Parenting, and the struggles that you go through, especially when you're a first-time mom and all of those things, and you don't dare say anything because nobody else is struggling. They're all fine. So it's all of those secrets that are building upon the secrets that are causing all of these things. And we need to start sharing with one another what is really happening, right? We need to share those experiences so that we can have a better understanding of ourselves as a collective, which ultimately then helps us work on our own self, right?
Absolutely.
It starts with us, and we need to do the work, but we also have to think of ourselves as a collective, and sharing the work that we're doing will help that collective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, that is kind of like where I would say like, this is like the new leadership or transformational leadership is owning it, you
Hmm.
know, when, even on the little things like, oh, I just had a moment where I judged this thing. It's calling yourself out on your own behavior, showing up late or showing up, or sloppy or messy or, those. And I have areas that I get to clean up in my life. I'm not 100% perfect. And, when you're going for your next level of whatever it is, whatever you're creating, it requires you to show up in a different version of yourself.
Hmm.
I think back to when I started my healing practice, trying to think back in 2008, and I like out of the gate, it was really interesting. It was like duck to water for me. It's like I had fear. How am I going to do it? But I just kept doing it because I needed to. My husband was had just lost his job because of his vision. And I was like, oh, honey, you couldn't like wait a year so I could get, just graduated school here. I'm just getting my business started. And it was just like, okay, this is where the rubber meets the road. I got to have that experience, right? I could have sat in that stewy place of like, the circumstances suck and how am I going to do this? And blah, blah, blah. I didn't think about it. I just did it. Right. I just did it. And I was successful, and it's almost like I go much to my chagrin because I still go, I don't know how that happened. I don't, but I did. It was just showing up all the time. Right. And I loved the work that I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Entrepreneurship is a whole nother animal. I don't show up in the same way for that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we were talking about this last week. It's like, it's almost, there's an element of it that I totally fight with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I get to do my work. That's what, I am showing me how I show up when I'm doing battle with certain pieces and elements of this business
Mm-hmm.
is it's my relationship that I get to clean up. And then I could go like, well, why do I fight with it? Or why do I make it so hard? Or blah, 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 blah. Whatever it is, there is a lesson or an experience that I am asking to have so that I can really see it and really get it and get to come back into the flow. And, we were talking about, those internal shifts. I was telling Larissa when we first got on, I had a huge shift the other day, and who would have known it was about that board flipping thing? How was that related? But it had something to do with success. And I'm sabotaging myself when I'm fighting with my business.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting you say that because, success, all of those things that we go through, I have a number of reasons why I shouldn't be successful. And I struggle with, aspects of it. But as you were talking about that, and my brother was the perfect one, right? He was the model. He was the dancer. He was the adored one. He was beautiful. He was, also kind and giving and never caused a fuss, right? And I was difficult. I was the difficult one. And,
Rebel.
and it was like, because I questioned everything. I was not okay with things being the way they were. I was not okay with, the difference in treatment. I wasn't okay with, my mom, not well. I was terrified of fire when I was younger, and she had candles on the table every night. And I would stay and sleep outside of her bedroom door. And this is like up until like probably 10 or 11. And, I was terrified. And so I would sleep because I wasn't allowed in. And then the next day I would be so angry with her, and I would call her out on it, but nothing changed. But I was always that one that was difficult because I would be like, that's not cool. Like, you can't treat me like that. And, pushing to the point that they were uncomfortable enough that they just had to push me completely away because I was not willing to put up with their behavior. And so then it was like, okay, well, we don't want anything to do with you because you're difficult. You're the problem. The rest of us, see, we get along fine pretending everything's okay over here. So we're going to stick together, and you can be difficult over there. You're the problem. It took me a long time to realize I was not the problem. Dysfunctional family was the problem. And I questioned that from a very young age and then needed to do. So I've always had to like push my way into things to be able, but it's how I've managed to keep opening the doors for myself to, so even when I'm struggling with something, I'll push. Now I push myself because I don't have anybody left. So I just push myself. It's like, I'm only responsible for myself, right? I do push my daughter a little bit because, hopefully she can learn a little bit from me. But yeah, it's just like, I have to push my own self because this is in my way. So I need to do something about it. I do. And so, yeah, I think I went on a tangent there. Sorry.
No, I love that story because I'm like, oh, well, that's how I know you, because you're so fierce, with what you're passionate about. And so I can see like, yeah, okay, well, maybe it didn't serve you but it did, because it didn't serve your family, because they wanted to keep the illusion going, and you're like the bubble popper,
Oh yeah.
It's like, no wonder why they're pissed at you, right? But that serves you, because look at how you utilize that skill now, and just where it gets to tweak is just when it's working against you, right? Because there are times where we're going to have to push through things. We're just, try giving birth and not pushing.
Your body's going to do it for you if you don't. So, might as well just join in and get it done.
Yeah, it was funny because just yesterday I was thinking about that for some odd reason when I was out hiking. And my mom was of that generation where they gave women spinals. They shave you she said, from nipples to knees, and then they give you a spinal, and then you're so out of touch. Yeah, they pull the baby out. So we have all these head traumas, or forceps babies, with all these little diggers in their heads. But so who knows what the heck that did to our thinking, right? But I was thinking about how that's just how disempowering the birth process is in general for women. And this is a whole nother topic I don't think we should go into, but I don't know.
4 minutes left. I don't know. Right.
I think it was because we said push. And I was like, well, except for that time, right, in our lives, the power to push was taken away from us, right? And there is something to that in all areas of our experiences being women right now on the planet, and how our mothers and our mothers' mothers were, I want to say treated, but the lives that they lived, the times that they lived in, and how, it's so relatable. We get to see it. That's part of the shift that we're talking about. It's like, there's a story of this, and also I don't have to do it that way anymore, right? And I can make a conscious choice to heal that, to say no more. If it's the parasite, I'm not listening to you. Blah, blah, blah.
I love that, the parasite. Yeah.
We're going to go over here, right? But it makes me shake my head sometimes. Like, what were we thinking? What were we thinking? Yeah. And there's still stuff that goes on out there that I go, yeah.
Oh, don't even get me started on that one.
I know this could open up a whole nother hour of conversation.
I noticed Krista had to jump off. Krista, if you come back to listen to the last few minutes, I saw you, just so you know, and thank you for commenting. If there's anyone else who has any comments before we go, I'll just pop it in the chat there, and we'll get to it before we hop off. Deb, you have anything exciting going on right now?
Oh yeah, actually I do. I started doing a Facebook Live every Wednesday in the Conscious Creativity Circle. So right now we are talking about resistance. And on April 26th, I'm going to be doing a workshop on finding your art's desire, a little play on words there. It's tapping into your art, your creation, what your expression is, and really feeling the desire that is really inside your own heart, and working with the energies of resistance and persistence. How do you take resistance and turn it into persistence? So we're kind of talking about that in the Conscious Creativity Circle, and then we're going to open that up a little bit more in a workshop that is going to be, I'm going to start working a little bit more ceremonial. That's what I'm really excited about, is bringing more ceremony into the experiences that I offer. And then there's going to be a 3-part class that we're going to be working in the energies of the moon. I also want to mention too that Wednesday is the new moon, and it's the solar eclipse. Not in this part of the world, but it's in, and so we're feeling, we should be feeling that energy right about now, as it's coming into the dark moon, and it's going to be really super dark. So it's interesting time to be working on these things that we're talking about. And so
and the link will be below, maybe not as soon as the recording's done, but I try to get up, same day-ish. So that the link will be below to find your circle, and also your website and everything, as well as mine. And if you have any other links, we can add it there too, Deb. And
awesome. Yeah, I'm not launching the workshop till Wednesday, so I'll post it in the content page.
And then we'll add it. But
no, actually, I'm glad to get that out. What are you working on? What kind of things are you working on? I know you've got some things cooking.
Yeah, I've got so many things, so many irons in the fire right now. And we're just revamping so many things, but I'm taking on some new clients right now. And I'm just going to be doing a couple of posts about people who want to dig in deeper. I want to work with some people who want to dig in deeper. Awesome. And Deb and I have had this conversation recently about why, and why I want to work with them, but also why I haven't been. So we're going to do this. We're going to do this together. So if you're thinking you want to dig in a little bit, there's going to be some stuff coming out really soon, probably within the next week. But also our morning calm program has some space open right now, and we do meditation, journaling, and discussion. And it's a really amazing, we get together every weekday morning, barring Canadian holidays. I'm in Canada. So, almost every weekday morning. And it's just amazing community of ladies that really are willing to look at some of the shit that they're sitting in right now, and, getting through it together. So I invite people to check that out as well. We have a 2-week free trial. So so it gives you a chance to try it, right? And see if it's going to work for you before you commit, because it's not for everybody, right? And then you have to be a little bit vulnerable, and not everybody's ready for that. So yeah. So we have that available. So, but the links will be up shortly-ish, today, tomorrow, that sort of thing. So I want to thank everybody for being here.
Thank you so much for being
comments
here. No, unless I'm just not seeing them.
But thank you for everybody who came in and joined us. And Deb, as always, an amazing conversation with you.
As always, it's always so juicy, enriching. I get such a big charge doing this. So I hope that's the same for you, and you guys out there. Thank you so much for joining us and playing a part of this collaboration of connections.
We're here because of you. So, even afterwards, if you're watching it for the first time or again, leave a comment for us, right? And we love that. And so we would love to hear your thoughts on what we've had to say, and maybe where you're at. So thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.